A poor single mom became the only person the CEO's son trusted. What happened next shocked everyone. If you're watching this right now, stop everything. What you're about to hear actually happened, and by the time it's over, you might need tissues. Let's begin. Her name was Elena Ramirez, 32 years old, raising a 6-year-old boy named Mateo in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled of old paint and instant noodles. Elena worked 3 jobs. Mornings cleaning offices downtown, afternoons as a cashier at a corner store, and nights folding laundry at a 24-hour laundromat just to keep the lights on. She hadn't bought herself new shoes in 4 years. The soles of her sneakers were held together with duct tape and prayers. Every night she tucked Mateo into the lower bunk. They shared bunk beds because the place was too small for 2, and whispered the same promise: one day, mijo, things will be different. Mateo would nod, his big brown eyes too serious for a child, and fall asleep clutching the only toy he owned, a faded stuffed dinosaur missing one eye. Across the city, in a glass mansion on top of a hill, lived Alexander Voss, the 8-year-old son of billionaire tech CEO Jonathan Voss. Alexander hadn't spoken a single word in 18 months. Not since the car accident that took his mother. Doctors called it selective mutism. Therapists came and went. Private tutors quit. Nannies lasted weeks before the boy's silence and sudden screams drove them away. Jonathan Voss, the man who could buy anything except his son's voice, was losing hope. One rainy Tuesday, Elena's cleaning agency sent her to an emergency job at the Voss estate. One of the regular cleaners had called in sick, and the CEO's housekeeper was desperate. Just the playroom and the boys' suite, the housekeeper said over the phone. Don't talk to the child. He doesn't like strangers. Elena arrived soaked, umbrella broken, hair plastered to her face. She was led through marble corridors that echoed like a museum. When she stepped into Alexander's playroom, she froze. Toys worth more than her yearly salary lay scattered: remote control helicopters, custom-built Lego castles, tablets in every color. And in the middle of it all sat a little boy with blonde curls, knees drawn to his chest, rocking slowly. Their eyes met. Something in Elena's chest cracked open. She saw her own son in this boy's hollow stare. She was supposed to clean in silence, but Elena had never been good at following rules that didn't make sense. She knelt on the carpet, careful not to invade his space, and spoke softly in Spanish, the language her own mother used when the world felt too big. Tienes hambre, pequeño? I bet you didn't eat lunch again. Alexander didn't move, but his rocking slowed. Elena pulled a slightly squashed empanada wrapped in foil from her lunch bag. She placed it on the floor between them like an offering. It's chicken. My son says they fix everything. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, Alexander crawled forward and took the empanada. He ate it in tiny bites, never taking his eyes off her. That was the first time in 18 months anyone saw Alexander Voss accept food from a human hand without screaming. The housekeeper found them 20 minutes later sitting cross-legged on the floor, Elena teaching him how to make a paper boat from a cleaning rag. The boy still hadn't spoken, but he smiled. A real smile. Elena was fired on the spot for breaking protocol. She left with $47 in her pocket and tears in her eyes, thinking she'd never see the boy again. But Alexander screamed for 3 straight days after she left. Refused food. Refused to sleep. The only word he managed to force out, raw and broken, was Elena. Jonathan Voss, a man who hadn't cried since his wife's funeral, stood outside his son's door listening to that single word repeated like a heartbeat. On the 4th day, he found Elena's employment records, drove to the bad part of town himself, and knocked on her chipped green door. Elena opened it holding a baseball bat, ready to defend her sleeping son. She lowered it when she saw the tall man in the expensive coat looking like he hadn't slept in years. "I'll pay you anything," Jonathan said, voice cracking. Name your price. Just, come back. He needs you. Elena stared at him. I'm not a therapist, Mr. Voss. You're the only person he's responded to since. He couldn't finish. She should have said no. She had her own child, her own bills, her own pride. But she thought of Alexander's empty eyes and the way he held that empanada like it was treasure. I'll do it, she said. But on my terms, $30 an hour, health insurance, and I bring my son with me every day. He's not staying alone in that apartment anymore. Jonathan Voss agreed to everything without blinking. And that's how Elena and Mateo moved into the staff wing of the Voss mansion. At first, it was chaos. The other employees whispered. The chef complained about cooking rice and beans. Mateo was terrified of the echoing hallways and hid behind his mother's legs. Alexander still didn't speak, but he followed Elena everywhere like a shadow. He sat outside the bathroom door when she showered. He waited by the kitchen while she cooked. When she read bedtime stories to both boys, because Mateo refused to sleep alone in the giant bedroom, he would crawl into her lap and rest his head on her chest. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, miracles started happening. Alexander spoke his second word, mas. More. He said it when Elena ran out of stories. Then came Mateo, when he wanted to play with her son. Then, one stormy night when thunder shook the mansion and both boys ended up in Elena's bed shaking with fear, Alexander whispered, "Mommy." He was looking straight at Elena. Mateo, bless his heart, didn't miss a beat. He scooted over and said, "It's okay, she's got room for both of us." Jonathan watched from the doorway, tears rolling down his face without permission. The boys became inseparable. Mateo taught Alexander how to play soccer with a rolled-up sock in the hallway. Alexander taught Mateo how to work the complicated game consoles. They built blanket forts that took up entire rooms. They shared clothes. Alexander's designer ones suddenly appeared on Mateo, too big but worn with pride. Elena never asked for more money, even when her bank account finally went positive for the first time in years. She bought proper shoes. She enrolled Mateo in a better school. She started night classes for nursing. But not everything was fairy tale perfect. The media found out. Billionaire's son calls maid mommy, scandal rocks Voss empire, screamed the tabloids. Jonathan's board of directors panicked. Investors whispered about instability at the top. His ex-girlfriends came crawling out of the woodwork claiming Alexander was acting out because he needed a real mother, not some gold-digging cleaner. One particularly vicious article included photos of Elena's old apartment building with the headline, "From the slums to the mansion, how far will she go?" That night, Elena packed her bags. She found Jonathan in his study staring at stock prices plummeting. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she said quietly. "I won't let my presence destroy what you've built. The boys will adjust." Jonathan looked up, eyes red. "You think this is about stock prices?" "Elena, my son speaks because of you. He laughs because of you. For the first time in 2 years, he asked me this morning if he could call me Dad again." "Dad. Not Mr. Voss. Not Sir. Dad." He stood up and took her hands. "Stay. Marry me. Not for the boys, for all of us. I don't care what the world says." Elena laughed through tears. "You're insane." "I'm in love with you," he said simply. "I think I fell the moment you gave my son an empanada instead of a diamond rattle." She didn't say yes that night. But she unpacked her bags. The wedding was small. Just the 4 of them on the back terrace at sunrise. Elena wore a simple white dress she bought off the rack. Mateo carried the rings on a dinosaur's back. Alexander walked her down the aisle holding her hand so tightly his knuckles went white. When the judge asked if anyone objected, Alexander shouted, "No, so loudly birds flew from the trees. The tabloids went wild again, but this time the headlines changed: billionaire CEO marries woman who saved his son's soul. Jonathan transferred half his company shares into a trust for both boys, Mateo included. He funded Elena's nursing school and built a foundation in her mother's name to help single parents with childcare. Years later, at Alexander's high school graduation, he gave the valedictorian speech. The entire auditorium was silent as he stepped to the microphone. "I used to think silence was safety," he began. "Then a woman with duct-taped shoes and a heart bigger than this entire city walked into my playroom carrying an empanada and hope. She taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up when you can't speak for yourself." He looked directly at Elena in the front row, now a registered nurse running the pediatric wing of the new children's hospital the Voss Foundation built. "She became my mom when I had none. And she never once asked for anything in return." The applause lasted 7 minutes. As the family walked out together, Jonathan's arm around Elena, Mateo and Alexander arguing about who got shotgun in the car, someone in the crowd recorded it on their phone. That video went viral with the caption, "A poor single mom became the only person the CEO's son trusted." What happened next shocked everyone. And if you're still here, crying or smiling or both, do me a favor. Like this video for Elena, for every mom holding it together with duct tape and love. Subscribe because there are more stories like this, real stories of people who refuse to let circumstances define them.